This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, everybody rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lord, as we gather this day to do the important business for people of the village of Owego, grant us wisdom, compassion, and understanding. Amen. Amen. All right, so just a little, so we've never had the field before, so I don't know how we run it, other than normally we like allow people to just interact. Probably not a great idea tonight, other than we'll hear like each side and then we'll talk about it and then hopefully make a decision. So while we're talking about it, I guess don't butt in unless we need to ask you a question. Well, other than that, let's do, so we'll do public comment. Yeah, I mean, you'll get a chance to. Okay. Okay. And then let's do it backwards. Let's do this one motion we got on here from the police department. That's not related to the agency thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's me. Mr. Mayor. Yep.
I don't have the agenda for the discussion agenda. I move that we hire Brendan McDivitt as a full-time police officer at a salary of $64,257 per year with a 6-month probationary period and starting date of, tentative starting date, because you can never be sure, don't put that in motion, of April 21st, 2024.
I'll second that.
It's not a start, it's a transfer.
He has a transfer, but that's his starting date with us. We're hiring him as a full-time officer, he has a transfer. But
I don't know how that works with the union contract as far as the salary goes.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Does that need to be part of the motion, or?
Yes. We need to ascertain the salary. The union actually doesn't get to decide what he's brought in at, because he's a lateral transfer and he has experience someplace else. That'd be my take. I don't know that that's correct.
Yeah, I don't know if that's correct either.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. You can certainly hire them at the rate set forth in the union contracts. Often when CBA covers people, you don't need to say it like we do with non-union employees. It's a good habit to have, don't get me wrong. But if, to the extent that we've got some, I guess, confusion about it, then
We're gonna hire him at this salary, and if it turns out that we can't, we're gonna adjust it.
well,
No?
I mean, what if he doesn't want to make less, right?
Or if he doesn't want what?
If he doesn't agree to the lower amount, then we'll, I don't want you to go on record offering something that you just can't do. To me, the better practice would be offer to hire him in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement. Understanding, we think it's 64,000, but if the CBA actually says he's got to start at the first year rate, then that would be what the CBA says.
We won't have a problem with that.
Yeah, not worried with that, but
We won't have a problem with that because he won't be coming here.
well, right, yeah.
Right.
This is the salary that he's negotiated with the chief. If this does not turn out to be the salary,
But I don't know if he can do that.
we'll have a different thing to do.
I don't know if you can do that, right?
Don't know if he can either.
Yeah, we're trying to find a bargaining agreement right now.
So how about if the motion is that he's hired at that rate, subject to the collective bargaining agreement, and if that doesn't work out, then it's gotta come back here for.
I mean, it is
I'm fine with that too. I mean,
It is
just
that.
being very clear about it.
Whether we say it, it is that anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. So, did we second that motion?
I second.
Fred seconded. Okay. Any other discussion on that? So we'll check into the salary.
Make it subject to the collective bargaining.
It's the same thing on the agenda.
No, that's
except
not what it says.
just.
That's not what my motion says about collective bargaining agreement. My motion says that we're gonna hire him at that particular price.
It's not in.
Did you get mine?
I just have this right here.
It's similar to that, except my motion did not have, to fill a Cox grant position.
So it does say, in the bargaining agreement, the village board may waive the years of service required to reach particular grades mentioned in the above sections if the new employee has sufficient years of experience in the same or similar classification. However, benefits are the same as for any other new hire. So I guess then the only thing to confirm is how many years was he working somewhere else, and does that match the?
We have the ability to not do that collective bargaining agreement. Read it again to me.
Yeah, so you can waive the years of service required to reach a particular grade if the new employee has sufficient years of experience in the same or similar classification. So
He's gotta plug into a grade.
he's got to plug into a grade. There's
That's
data hire to completion of first year, second year, third year, fourth year. As long as he's got, at the $64,000 mark, what doesn't even match on to that.
that is,
It doesn't match any of the.
It messes that one.
it should match
Oh,
it
you're
should
right.
match
So
the
this is-
second to largest number
this is class.
in 2022.
It's actually, yeah.
It's last 2 years ago, number you want.
Yeah. I mean, if he's hired as a class 4,
That's, yes, keep going.
then
It would be.
I think you just say as a class 4, to be credited with 4 years of service.
Why do you wanna do all that?
Because
the union's gonna.
that number doesn't look right.
The 64,000 doesn't look right.
No, it's not.
And it
The chief took it
also,
out of the contract. Can I see that?
It's supposed to be 66,000.
I think it's 66.
Let me see it.
66 one.
This is the number that the chief has
This-
negotiated to hire him as.
Yeah, we can't hire him for less than this if he's a class 4.
It's either
Then he's not going to be a class 4.
It's either
And then it's gotta be this.
66. There's no in the middle. The way their contract works. Everybody gets one of those numbers.
How many years of experience?
He has lots of years of experience.
Is he
Yeah.
supposed to be
There
getting
was a
hired
reason,
this
there
week?
was a reason to pick that number.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's gotta be one of those.
I'll go with the 66,184. I think he's gonna complain about getting a couple more thousand.
No, he's not going to complain. Somebody else is going to complain.
We gotta play by their rules, or they will grieve us tomorrow.
They're grieving us tomorrow.
And again, I would not say the 66,184. I would just say as a class, credited with 4 years of service.
Yeah.
In accordance with section.
I know,
Article
read
15.
that to me one more time, what you just read before that.
Yeah, scrolling down. Article 15, section 4.
Yeah, we can't negotiate an actual price, we can just plug it into a grade. They want to allow them to transfer.
Okay.
You want a lot on it?
I can't reach the chief right now, and I don't wanna bother him. He's not too much.
When did you say you
I wanna hold off
started,
on, what?
When did you say you started?
April 21st.
So we had time.
Yes, you've got 2 meetings.
That's what I was asking.
He's gotta give notice. There are other.
We don't have time. I withdraw my motion. Let's go on to something else.
Okay. Alright, so let's do the hearing. Or whatever I call it, the appeal, I guess is the correct term. So. Okay, first time through this, so. We're here to hear an appeal based on the OHPC's decision on the porch. And the root of the decision, they agree with almost all of the porch besides the fact of the concrete versus the wood. So that's what we should focus on as far as our discussion. Because everything else OHPC agrees with as far as the repair of the porch. Does it say how we do it?
I mean, the review is based on the same record that was before the commission, using the same criteria in the historic preservation chapter. So to the extent that anyone is here representing the property owner or OHPC, they shouldn't be introducing anything new, no new information, just highlighting what was submitted, giving them an opportunity to say why you think OHPC was wrong on what was before them, and if OHPC wants to talk, then why they believe the application was in fact properly denied.
Okay. So I guess we'll start with Cindy.
I put my application in June of last year. The first thing we talked about was the base of the porch being concrete, stairs being recessed in. And they said they didn't have an issue with the concrete, but they wanted the stairs recessed out. Then the holdup was, I wanted to change the pitch on the roof a little bit so the water would run off better. They wanted more information, I gave them that. And when it comes to September, they denied me. After dragging it out all summer long. Lots of text messages going back and forth. The base of the porch was fine in every single one of those text messages, and then in September it wasn't. And they held a meeting, and I was there for 2.5 hours, and they didn't have a quorum, and they voted on my project anyway. And then we had to have another meeting.
What was the time frame from the application in June until the first denial decision?
September.
September.
September 7th.
Okay.
And then again, at the special meeting they had in September, I think it was a few weeks later.
Okay. But September is 6 months ago at this. Aren't there two 62-day windows in which this all has to take place?
Let's see, so.
They didn't do an official denial. They didn't put it in the minutes as
Yeah, okay.
a denial, even though they denied it.
Okay, yeah.
October 5th was their denial.
No, I don't think that's right, Fran.
So they're supposed to, within 30 days after the close of the public hearing, wait, never mind, look, that's wrong there. Let me find it.
I just read the entire chapter in the code book and had it all ready for this, and then found out it was not the right,
The old one?
it's the old one, I had it all ready. The 30 days isn't, 60 days isn't.
There's a specific reference to 30 days in here, but, you know, the
There wasn't
62
the old
days is definitely on zoning board and planning board
Yeah.
actions. Within 62 days of the close of the public hearing, decision should be made. I'm not seeing anything in the historic preservation law jump out at me about that specific time frame, but I think 62 days is a reasonable period of time to ask a decision be made after a public hearing is held.
And then you know the public hearing, right?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, we got all the minutes. That's pretty good.
Could we ask someone if they know if they didn't, just right?
Sure.
Don't recall ever holding a public hearing on this, but we had multiple meetings on this, yes. And it was constantly sent back to Cindy to please redesign, give us a different design than what you're presenting, because what you're presenting with replacing the entire base of the concrete of the porch, the wooden base of the porch with concrete is not acceptable. And this was stated in the beginning.
September.
Okay.
In
No,
September.
don't go back and
It
forth.
was in,
I know it was.
Don't go back and forth.
I know,
it wasn't until September when they denied me that they wanted me to redesign my porch.
you didn't officially sign.
So Nate, it's 126.13C. Within 62 days of the close of the public hearing, the commission shall approve with conditions or modifications, request additional information, or deny the certificate of appropriateness.
126.13C.
Yeah, C, and then D is the
Are you on the old one or the new one there?
Am I looking at the old one or the new one? Because
It should be the new one.
the one that's online doesn't seem to match that.
126.13C in this one that I have a copy of says, upon receipt of all information required herein, the commission shall deem the application complete and shall place the application on the agenda of the next meeting.
Yeah.
Could it be something else?
That's what I'm looking at. Notice requirements.
Do you have the?
There you go. So 126.14 is
14.
holding a public hearing.
Yeah, that's,
Within-
okay.
All right,
126.14.
126.14C. Were you just, was it 13 or 14?
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
14.
Okay, 14.
You're right. I was like,
I'm sorry. I got lost in the staple.
Yep.
Apologies.
Yes, so you're correct, within 62 days.
Yeah.
After the
So
close of a public hearing.
was the notice of the public hearing published in the newspaper? Is there anything in the packet about that? Is it OHBC's practice to not publish notices of public hearings?
The DPW posts all the meetings on the village website.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this requires public hearings notices to be published in the newspaper at least 10 calendar days before the public hearing date.
Right.
All our meetings are published at least 10 days before the meeting.
Yeah, and that's when everything's heard.
So the notice has to specify, like a normal public hearing notice, time and place of the public hearing, a brief description of the proposal, and the address where the proposal, or the location where the proposal may be reviewed prior to the hearing.
We're having meetings, not public hearings.
You are required to have public hearings under the code, though.
We have board meetings.
I understand the distinction. You can have board meetings, but a board meeting like the village board will have a public hearing during its board meeting. And it opens the public hearing so that members of the public can comment on it,
Yeah, we have that as well.
and then it closes it. But there's a requirement for a public hearing notice to be published. I think what Ed is just asked is valid, because if there was no public hearing notice published in the newspaper, I think that's a procedural issue.
No, there's always a public hearing notice or a notice meeting.
A notice of meeting is different than a public hearing notice.
That's what the DPW puts out
That's what
for everybody.
And
It's just what they
I'm
put
not
out for
I'm not
everybody.
trying to say that you folks have done anything
I think
wrong.
you're getting a semantics question wrong here, because when we have our OHBC board meetings, we do have your public comment at the beginning and the end, just like with a regular board meeting, but those are meetings, not specific public hearings, which require a separate 10-day notice. We have never had a public hearing. So that's why I'm wondering what you're talking about here in the law for a public hearing. Because all the meetings we've had since September with Miss Cindy here have been meetings, not public
Yeah,
hearings.
you're required to
In the
hold.
law, it's not. The law
Unless
says-
My guy,
is the semantic that you're saying is that the notice for public comments, is that
No.
considered a public hearing?
no, you're
Mr. Mayor, my
supposed to
guy?
have a public hearing on every application, according to law.
Mr. Mayor, my guy?
Yep.
On 26.14B, the commission shall hold a public hearing prior to rendering a decision on any application for a certificate of appropriateness.
You do that.
What's that?
You do that at the meeting.
No.
No, that's
Wait
not-
up, I'm,
That's
called
wait,
public
up, wait
hearing.
up.
Like you're
Wait
the
up.
public and the neighbors.
No, that's not a public hearing. Public hearing is an official thing.
It's a legal thing.
The commission shall hold a public hearing prior to rendering a decision on any application for a certificate. Notice of the public hearing shall be published in a newspaper or general circulation of the village at least 10 days, calendar days prior to the public hearing date. The notice shall da-da-da-dee-da-da-da-da. This is a public hearing, like when we're required to have a public hearing about something.
Just to be clear here, can I chime in? Because we're talking about dates and times here. So in terms of public hearings, if every COA that ever was issued or denied or withdrawn from the actions of OHPC since it's reformed back in 2018. There's never been a public hearing process as part of this. And I'm not sure if that invalidates everything or it's being used at this point to make a point that the protocol hasn't been followed. I'm not sure what this means. I mean, we've had board members that are reading the law right now sit in our meetings and never ask us or never tell us about that. So I'm wondering why it's lasted since 2018 and all the decisions. I think up to now there's 120 COAs that have been issued, applied to code, and if necessary, zoning involved. I'm not sure really the point of this conversation. Are we addressing this challenge to this OHPC filing protocol because there was no public hearing associated with it? I'm not sure I get the point. And if you're gonna read that letter of the law, then you can say that the board of trustees you are to blame for not following through your own law and for double checking that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not sure what that piece is being brought up for. Do you understand? It's kind of a crazy piece. If we were supposed to follow that law, we never have. So there, maybe it's a bigger thing. Maybe we should put Cindy on hold, and the board of trustees should address how it's gone so long with a commission that hasn't been doing it according to local law 126. Is that what we're looking for?
But doesn't the OHPC expect that the property owners follow the letter of the law?
That's a moot point. That's a moot point. It's a distraction to my question. I mean, is it something that you need to address that larger issue? That all the COA applications have been invalid since 2018 because that hasn't existed?
Okay, Jim, hold on a minute, because we're trying
Okay.
to.
Okay. That's fine. Right. I'm asking you a very calm question because that seemed to be the direction of the opinion. That's all.
The law does say you have to hold a public hearing for every single COA. So if you didn't know that before, everybody knows it now. Rusty.
So, there is no nefarious thing here. Cindy didn't come to us with that and say, I want this all overturned by that. We are doing an appeal that we haven't done before. And so now we are required to try and do it correctly. And so we are looking at law that we haven't read before in detail, and now we are looking at it and reading it directly. And now we are noticing that there is a piece there that we didn't pay attention to or notice before.
Should be a public hearing, and then there is a clock, 62-day clock.
And I think on that point, right? So the person who is potentially aggrieved by that failure to have a public hearing notice is Cindy and others. And the remedy, if Cindy said, you know what, in fact, I do want that public hearing, then it's like, okay, the village board would send it back down to hold a properly noticed public hearing.
But it doesn't say may hold a public hearing, it says shall hold a public hearing.
It does. And the village board, I think, on its own, could also send it back down to HPC and say, we want you to hold a public hearing and notice it in the newspaper as required under the code. I think the village board could also choose to say, Cindy might not be saying she cares about that right now, and move past that onto the merits of the decision itself.
Sure, my point in raising the issue is that it's 9 months at this point. It should have been 2 62-day periods with public hearings and notices and all of those things that should have taken. And that's not on our clients, if you will, to make us follow the rules. We should be following the rules ourselves.
Yeah, she put in the application in June and it wasn't addressed until September.
So this should have been
More
addressed
than
6 months
62
ago.
days.
Yeah.
Should have had this same meeting 6 months ago.
So, the process here says that in order to do this correctly, various things need to be done correctly, just as we send it back to the OHPC, as we send it back to them, so that they can give a determination and give Cindy a letter and us a letter that told what their determination was and why. I don't say this is what I wanna do, I'm just saying, the process says, we didn't do that thing correctly before. And now we're finding another thing that we didn't do correctly. That would, one alternative, one solution would be to send it back and have a public hearing done and have that done correctly, that's a potential. I don't know if we could say, we just are gonna ignore that, or I don't know if we could say that it would be up to the complainant to say that she would like to waive that and move along. I don't know how that, what, of those three choices, what ones we have and what ones we should do, but that's the gist of it.
Probably in this situation, it would kind of be up to Cindy.
Ask Dave if he thinks that would be something that
Because that's only gonna take
could
one
be
day.
done, but
In my,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's, you know, the timeline in the 62 days is for the benefit of the applicant.
Yeah.
Right, and if Cindy wants the board to just move forward with the information available tonight, then the board, I think, could do that. I think, Ed, you know, your point about, well, no public hearings, that we shall hold one. I think that's a valid one. But to Jim's question earlier, well, we've never held a public hearing, does that mean everything's invalid? I think, that's a question I'm not ready to delve into right now.
Well,
The
of
60
those other meetings, how many, have requested, review by the village board?
Yeah, again, this is the
That's
first,
zero.
right?
Okay, so
Right.
then the others, as long as there's no problem with them.
right, I would say.
There's none.
Statute of limitations is probably
Yeah,
passed.
Yeah, and
We're
no
not-
one's agreed,
we're
so.
not addressing that,
Yeah.
that particular thing, because we don't know and we're not addressing it. I will say something quickly though, the 62 days would be at the close of a public hearing, since there was never a public hearing, there was never 62 days.
Right.
So that date is not meaningful.
But that's in there to
No,
stop.
that's in there to make sure
dragging
that
out
things
for
don't take
2
forever.
years.
Right, right, again, as Nate said, it's to protect the
Yes,
applicant.
yes.
So Cindy, are you good if we ignore that fact for now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I remember what
So
we're
in the
doing.
future, there should be public hearing.
Yes, yeah, so just so everybody knows, every certificate of appropriateness needs a properly noticed public hearing.
And there's a difference between the public hearing and the public
And
hearing.
reading, yeah.
Yeah.
Do those, and I know this isn't on Cindy, I'm just asking, or do you know, do the OHPC applications go through Meg?
Yeah.
Okay, so Meg needs to be told that public hearing notices need to be.
Right, because they're different, like each application is gonna have to have its own
Its own
notice
separate public hearing.
in the paper.
Each single one, and they need to be applied. I think one of the reasons why we've never had a public hearing is A, we assumed that the wording of the law meant not public hearing, but that meeting, and B, that we often get applications literally 24 hours before the meeting.
Right, which is not gonna.
Yeah, you can't.
And we
Yeah.
can't, so we put out a notice of the meeting, all of them are provided, but it's not a notice of public hearing. Absolutely not.
So that's a change we'll have to make.
So,
You won't get any applications before 10 days. Within 10 days, you won't be able to do it.
we can't do anything.
Right.
Now,
13 days.
we will not be-
Well, right,
Yeah.
it's gotta be public.
Absolutely.
mincing the law,
Yeah.
mincing the law, but it does say that a public hearing must be held prior to rendering a decision. So that doesn't mean that you couldn't look at something and talk about it, you just can't make the decision.
True, yeah.
Yeah, give the applicant guidance and
Yeah.
before the full application moves forward.
Yeah, that could be it, yeah. So anyway, that's not really about this.
Yeah, but that would give
particular one,
neighbors and other people a chance to
Yeah.
express their opinion.
It's required by law to take action.
Right.
And it is different than what we've been doing, because in the newspaper, it needs to list every single, basically the agenda of the meeting.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
So are we going to proceed then?
We
going
are,
to-
yeah.
Because Cindy
Cindy
decides
says
to
okay.
officially waive that?
And it would only slow her process down.
Okay.
I forget, I think Cindy was telling us about, right, it was your turn. I think we were.
I think I
asking you a
interrupted
question.
you to ask that question.
Oh, what was it called again?
The porch.
Oh, my
The
porch?
process that you went
Oh.
through.
So,
Sorry.
because you have to have your application in what? 10 or 15 days before the meeting, I got my application.
Might be
in.
more now, but yeah.
But I noticed other people don't have to do that. Even at the last historic meeting, somebody's application was turned in that day and they were at the meeting, so.
So that might be
Depends on
changing.
who you are.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, if you all look through the January 15th text messages, you'll see that, the text messages between Jim and I, they were okay with the base of my porch. They just wanted more information on the roof. And I was told in August that I didn't need to come to another meeting. And then right before the September meeting, they told me I should come because somebody had more questions.
Okay.
And I asked if I could know what those questions were, to have the information with me, and nobody got back to me. And then I went and they denied my application.
So I guess my question is on the base, as far as like, how are you actually gonna do it on a concrete? Like, I know it's up, whatever,
It's only
28 inches.
2 feet. It's 2 feet off the ground. So what they do is they dig a footer and they put forms down in the ground, 4 feet. So if there's a frost, it doesn't heat the porch.
Right.
The wall, I think, is 8 inches wide, comes off the house 10 foot, goes across the front of the house 38 feet, and back to the house. So then it's just a little concrete hole. They fill it with dirt, compact it, and then they pour the top over the top.
So it's basic, so it's a solid, I mean, I'm not gonna say solid, but it's walled off underneath the porch, correct?
Yes. It's not solid concrete.
Right.
It's a
Yeah, no,
walled
it's like
area.
there's an open space with dirt in the middle.
A lot like what 325 Front Street did, but they did it with cinder block, and they probably didn't do a foot.
Probably not. So my question, looking at all this, just personally, is right now, does it have like 4x4 posts or something?
Probably got stacked stone
Lattice.
piers on the corners, right?
No,
You don't have anything that the,
it's underneath. There's some cinder blocks laid up,
oh, okay,
but you can't see them. It's got ugly
lattice, yeah.
and it's not fancy. It's just lattice to lattice, right to the corner. Did you see those pictures?
Yeah.
It's pretty ugly.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like an old porch. It looks like it belongs not on a house on Front Street.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want me to replace it with something that's not there.
So my question is more.
And when the flowers are there, you can't even see the base. And then one of Jim's messages to me, he even states that he couldn't see what the base looked like of my porch. He had to go way in St. Pat's parking lot and look around the corner.
But the base is gonna be a, like, stamped, concrete.
Yes.
Similar to what Jim Overheiser's house has on its
Yes,
raised foundation.
yes. Match my foundation.
Yeah.
And just those liners that go inside the concrete form are $4,000. And I was given permission to order those by Jim.
So my question is more, and I don't even wanna bring it up, but can water flow through underneath your porch right now?
Yeah.
Won't be able to with a wall.
I can put,
You may
would you want a
trigger,
tube in there?
you may trigger flood damage prevention laws.
Probably have to apply, well, you'll need to apply for a flood damage permit, and then when you apply for the flood damage permit, the floodplain, that'll trigger whether a variance is needed for that.
So we may say yes, and you may still not be able to put your concrete porch in. Like, we can't put a bath over in our, but it's taking us a lot of work to put a bathroom in Marvin Park.
Right.
Because
You may
you're gonna
have to
affect the
put-
floodplain. Yeah.
You may have to put vents in that
Well, I have to,
thing around. You might have to put vents so if water comes, it can,
no, because it would wash the dirt out. You'd
Right,
have to
it's
make,
solid dirt under.
it would have to be tunels that the water could go through because it would wash the dirt out and the concrete would collapse.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to put flood vents in it the way you're talking. To me, that's my hurdle with it, construction wise.
So Cindy, you said there was a problem with the pitch of the roof also?
Well, right now it's got a little bit of a hip roof. I don't know if you're familiar with that, what that is. The roof originally had the old fashioned gutters that were
Integrated.
integrated in.
Yeah.
They aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
So what they did is they just put plywood across that. So the water comes down and sits right on the edge of that and rots everything out. Right now it's dripping down through my porch, and it has been for
Yeah.
a year now
Yeah.
that I've wasted.
Rusty's got his hand up.
So, the OHPC has not denied the pitch of the roof or the pillars or any of that other stuff. So the pitch of the roof has nothing to do with this appeal. They only denied two things: the removing the porch base and replacing it with the two-inch concrete slab, and they're removing the, that's the concrete slab, and then removing the base and replacing it with concrete around. Those are the only two things they found exception to. The rest of it, they did not. So all that other stuff is not part of this discussion, sorry.
Gotcha.
And I can piggyback off that. The way I read the decision, it's the only reason it got denied was that porch. So if the board approves or overturns the decision, I think everything would be approved, right? Because there were no issues described with anything else in the decision letter. Right?
It's just the concrete.
Just the concrete.
Okay. So, do you have anything else to add to us? Then we'll hear from OHPC of, I mean, we got their packet, but.
No, I wanna hear anything more Cindy wants to say, because this is her chance.
Well, so you're saying I might have to do something different here?
I mean, I don't know, I'm not code or anything, but I'm thinking just from what we've gone through with our own building projects.
When you apply
That
for
might
the
be trouble.
permit,
Oh.
code is gonna say,
Well, he's already got all my stuff, and he told me he didn't need anything else from me.
okay,
All he needed was this.
We're gonna
that
double check with
certificate.
code to
Yeah.
make sure that
Yeah.
you do not need a
Yes.
flood permit.
yes,
Be careful.
Yes.
Because you are definitely gonna need a floodplain development certificate.
And did they get that for 325 Front Street when they
Probably not.
built that
There
concrete
have
wall?
been some
No, because the
recent
three
issues.
twenty-five was built in 1972.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, the one you.
So the flood damage law has been recently taken into stronger consideration, I guess I'll say.
Yeah.
A harder eye has been given to that in the village. And so I can't say what happened with anything prior, but anything that is certainly going forward now needs to be looked at. And things that might
Since
have.
November?
Yeah.
And even things that might have been permitted might now need, or excuse me, that were not required to get a permit, might have to go back and get a permit. So we are in the midst of figuring that.
yeah.
What to say.
Do you know the flood elevation of your property?
No.
Is it above the base flood elevation or?
The basement, I don't know how much water was in that basement.
Yeah.
But the
Not
first floor,
basement, the
No.
base flood elevation.
I don't know.
You are on the
First floor.
You are on the little bit of a hill there.
there was no water on the first floor.
Yeah,
Cause you're on that same, like, Main Street there, didn't flood.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember water coming down that block. That was scary.
Yeah.
That was a good, right, it may be fine, it may not be fine.
Yeah.
No.
So I mean, the issue is gonna be, even if we were to grant the appeal and
As long as
grant
that
you
came back okay.
yeah, as long as, I mean, so that's gonna be the next,
That'll be your next hurdle, I guess.
Yeah.
Modify.
so you just would have to understand.
But if this was approved in June, I wouldn't have to do this.
No.
Well, you technically you would have to, but, you know.
Can I make it?
Yep.
All approvals of all kinds of things, even if they were approved, they weren't approved through the floodplain. So once again, what this means is that whatever responsibilities we had with the floodplain as it moves along, or was it 2 years ago, or in June or whenever, if someone approves something then, and we now find out, actually, if we find out that we approved it then, and it gets built, it has to be remedied.
Yeah.
At great cost to management. So even if we or you didn't understand or didn't do it, if you put it in and it's not right, it's a problem. With everybody.
And it's
We
not
don't
us,
want you to have that problem, it's with us,
Right.
we're having trouble with it on all our things.
Right.
It's a problem.
It's not us that finds the problem, it's FEMA, and then they like pull your flood insurance and stuff like that.
I don't have
Well, that's
a
not
budget,
pretty.
so I don't care.
okay. Well, but you could render your property ineligible for any sort of FEMA
Yeah, if you wanted
assistance
to
in the
sell it or
future,
something.
for the next owner, so, yeah.
Don't hold up the sale.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
So, yeah, every permit, I should say, every application and every COA that we're approving now, we're having to tell people you also have to get approved for the flood.
Yeah.
You have to get a flood permit.
Kind of like how we found out they have to have public hearings.
Yeah.
Except we found it with our own building projects.
So it could be approved and then I have to do that next step.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're definitely gonna have to do that next step. Unless you're not in the floodplain, but you probably are.
Yeah.
Seems like it would be
99%
by
of the
inches if you're
village.
not, yeah.
Another thing that we could do is uphold OHPC's decision to deny it because it supports what the state says, that they don't want to see concrete in that application. And our own guidelines say they don't want to see concrete in that application. And what Cindy could do is apply for another material that would be approved, whether it's wood or substitute wood material. But there's other materials that could be used in that place that would be approved. And those could be explored, and that's part of the process that people usually follow, is to explore some other alternative materials for the places. And at this point, it was just a refusal to switch. We just wanted it to be approved or denied with the concrete as the only material for that spot. And so
My
that's why
original
that,
application went in June for concrete. And concrete was not an issue until September.
No, concrete absolutely was to ship, absolutely.
Read Jim's,
Even in the
read
first
Jim's,
meeting that I was sitting at, yes, it was.
it's too bad you didn't record him like you were supposed to.
Yeah, it is.
Once again, the argument that we're having here is whether or not somebody or some group thought that that was going to be acceptable at a particular time, or said it was going to be acceptable, or they thought they were going to say it was going to be acceptable, but didn't make an official determination, and then upon further whatever, decided that that was not the correct thing. I just want to box that one little piece in about the time frame, about what somebody said at one time and what they said later, which doesn't make it nice, but it doesn't make it official earlier, and it doesn't then therefore mean that you're just stuck with it. You said you gotta have it. It's just part of the process there. Once again, that's just a piece. So I want to move us along a little bit on a piece, and it's complicated law and stuff, and it's complicated in the new code that we adopted in 2019. And boy, we put this in here, I don't remember us putting it in here, but we did. It says in that code that we're going to make some decisions based on the Secretary of Interior standards. And I don't remember what page it's on, but it's in there.
Yep.
And we didn't have that in our old code that we were gonna follow
Right,
such
but that's
standards. And I don't know that I don't know if it says if we have exceptions to that. So somebody can find it in there, fine, but it's in there.
Yeah, so I did talk to Nadine, 'cause she was big in creating this law and putting it back in, and she said that that's one of the reasons that it is an appeals process, is because OHPC is held to the Secretary of the Interior standards, which lists materials and so on and so forth that they can use. While when we look at it, we're not really held to those, because that's the point of the appeal.
Okay.
So, but what they are as a board held to those.
They're supposed, yeah, it says in there that they're supposed to follow those standards. They have on the piece of the document that Jim said, they have reach out to Linda Mackey from SHPO, and she says that we use this Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. Standard number 6 certainly applies here. Deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. Well, that's, once again, we don't know that that's a mandatory. We don't know whether that's a recommendation or how mandatory that is, but should be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities. And where possible, materials. So interesting there, that leaves some wiggle room in there, that it should look, that porch should look the same in general, which of course you're gonna do with all the wood on the top and stuff. And it should have colors and it should have texture, but they even make up where possible materials. So they made their own little exception there for materials. I mean, maybe that's just the way I'm seeing it or reading that, but that seems to be in there. And that makes some room there for that. Just when we do this, because we're supposed to be following to some degree the guidelines, even though Mike just said we have some room also to overturn guidelines. But kind of the HPC kind of does it.
Right.
I took the webinar on substitute materials, and it was just the other day, and it was an hour and a half class on the use of substitute materials on historic exteriors, and it explained the use of porches and things that are down low to the ground, and why our new wood is like new growth, and there's like the widest greens, and our old growth wood is so tight. So all our old wood is great, nothing happens to it. Like through the flood, it didn't work, right? All the new wood did, right? And so all the new wood that people are using on porches and stuff coming from the lumber yards, they work. They don't last very long. So what they're offering is to use materials that are polycarbonates and stuff, and composite materials, because it can withstand the foot traffic of the porch and the weather. It's flat, right? The rain hits it and stuff. So there's other things other than wood that they're suggesting could be used on porch floors.
But OHPC is requiring or wants Cindy to replace that porch floor with wood.
Wants to show something that looks like that wood. So there's all these new materials. So she would just be choosing something, could be wood, but it could be one of these wood-like materials that are stronger. And so there's so many.
But it seems like concrete stamped to look like wood would do the trick.
Right.
The state doesn't say so with the application that they saw. The state saw this application and reviewed it and said that this doesn't pass how it is. So
But keep in mind that.
stamped
Last
concrete.
year, Trex wouldn't have been okay either, and it is this year.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there
they
are
changing the requirements for sure.
There are materials that act like tongue and groove or whatever that would be being replaced.
Nadine brought that up to me when I was on the phone with her, that the Secretary of the Interior is very currently, like now, changing requirements of materials based on, like what Laura's saying, to allow more composites and things that are not actually wood.
There's a lot of bulletins about that with show pictures about placement for what could be used and what, and they're all just suggestions to look at to see what would best fit in your spot. Jim is raising his hand.
Yeah.
Keep going.
What's up, Jim?
Gotta get my mic on. So, just to clarify things, I want to take the dirty word concrete out of your conversation, because this is not about no concrete. And the discussion we had with Cindy when we were doing the finding of facts about her project is the issue is the stamped concrete surface. If you want to simplify this, that it's a wooden porch. We actually talked to her about new concrete piers under those pillars. You know, in our house, we had metal stakes that were holding up the pillars in front of our house, and we replaced those with concrete piers. But the nature of the finished product should look like the original porch. And Laura is absolutely right in using the word Trex in synthetic material, that in a letter, and I can dig that up from SHPO, they talked about the Trex flooring. They're allowing that because it's starting to look so much more wood-like, and they recognize the fact, especially in the Northeast, that the new products simply don't last. So when we talk about materials, to have a deck that's Trex is actually acceptable. And we've accepted a couple of projects very recently in Owego that have that. So, you know, a concrete piered porch and a concrete that, if there's stonework, a foundation that has copy of the stonework to continue around the base of that porch, we don't have problems with that. In fact, they have a slate sidewalk that in there they want to replace a slate sidewalk with concrete. And in discussions with SHPO, they're allowing that as well because of the safety considerations of the slate sidewalks, and it's an enormous expense to try to maintain the slate sidewalk in a safe way. So those are a couple of things. So concrete, we're not adverse to concrete. It actually comes down to the surface is a stamped concrete, and stamped concrete does not look like wood. It's simply not the same. You can't take stamped concrete and hang it over the edge with a drip edge. So be careful that you make concrete the evil thing here. We aren't adverse to that, but the application that they were suggesting, we are. The other thing I have to defend too, because it was brought up as a fact, we don't have an ounce of stamped concrete in our house at 260 Main Street. It's all natural stone. There isn't an ounce of stamped concrete.
So,
Okay.
so just so I'm clear, OHPC would be okay with the I'm gonna call it the foundation of the porch?
Yeah, so could we get
Like, could we just
Yeah.
cross that off the list to
Yeah.
start with?
Yeah, we could, in addition to that, to get the timeline, Mike, and that's a great question to ask, to get that timeline on the meeting, the second meeting in September that we held because of the quorum issue. That second meeting, we spent a considerable amount of time with Cindy, and I thought a very congenial conversation talking about the other options that weren't stamped concrete, to use concrete, to build the wall, to give a support for that porch, and then putting the synthetic materials on top of it to make it look like wood. We were all okay with that. We were fine with that. And then the final thing, when talking about it, it was still stamped concrete. And so we went with that. And going back to, I have to get the facts straight on that. I agree with Cindy that we texted back and forth. And when we discussed her original scope of work, she talked about the stamped concrete. She had a design of steps, and it's not about the concrete, it's about the design that they're doing. Her design, she wanted to embed the steps into the front porch, which that doesn't exist. So she agreed to move that out. So that was part of that whole initial discussion. In the interim, with that, we had concerns about the roof. So we had to kind of look at the roof, her to send us some more information, which she did. She abided by that, and we looked at other examples in the community about the roof, and we praised her for conserving the pillars and as much of the railings as she could, and it was a real cooperation back and forth. In that interim, I decided to send that building and those pictures to SHPO to ask for their opinion. And their opinion yields a certain amount of gravity, because if they don't like something, a historic tax credit possibility is out the window. So, we can go into this thinking we would also like to help the homeowners to keep them in line with SHPO's tax credit program, to save them 20% on the cost of whatever they do. And Cindy had iterated that it was an issue that it was so expensive. The concrete and the stamps were very expensive. So, let's help maintain that possible 20% reduction in cost. And that interim and that fact finding that we did ultimately led us to the first September meeting where we had quite a bit of discussion about it. Because we denied it at that point, but it wasn't a quorum, we came back. And at the end of that meeting, our agreement was to table it because we are allowing her to adjust her original application to come forward with one that if she did the porch a different way, we were ready to help her out and approve it. And that's what the motion that you made in a meeting last month, that because we tabled the decision and didn't say why we tabled it, so we came forward, we had it in the meeting again, we did the formal vote, I gave you the explanation of that. So that's the timeline. It did take a long time, but I'll tell you, there's a project that we've worked on in the village that we're closing in a year of discussion with that project. And a lot of what we do at OHPC is to talk to the homeowners about what they're going to do and trying to agree with them on what the scope of work is and encourage them. If you had that as your scope of work, it wouldn't pass. So modify it. And that's exactly what we did with Cindy in that September meeting, that we tabled it. And then we ultimately had to deny it because the application came in the same. So I hope all that information helps. Concrete is not a bad word.
I guess I've got maybe a question that might help clarify, and then feedback.
Yep.
So,
Is the question for Jim?
it's a question for Jim, I guess, or something.
Okay.
Decision says, based on the following, the denial of the COA is based on the following facts, and those two sentences: remove existing porch base and replace it with concrete, or three sentences. Remove it with concrete. Porch is 38 feet by 10 foot by 2 foot, period. So I think what I've heard is those two sentences are okay, actually. You're okay with the concrete porch base. And so it's really the replace wood flooring, stairs, and skirting with stamped concrete that is the issue. Because at a certain point, we're gonna look at the criteria for issuing a certificate of appropriateness. And if that is the narrow piece of it, which it sounds like it. And then, Jim, I think what you were saying was, and I guess I'm wondering, I'm asking is if there's a disconnect between the level of stringency required for applying for and getting historic tax credits for a particular project versus the standard which would be reviewed for issuance of a certificate of appropriateness under the village's code and the Secretary of Interiors, et cetera. Now, I mean, there maybe not be a lot of daylight there, but I'm just asking, because if you through your process are, and I think it's helpful potentially, trying to help people keep their eligibility for historic tax credits, that's great. But when you run into somebody who says, you know what, at the end of the day, I don't care, then are you holding them to a higher standard than they need to be?
It's actually a great question. It's a great question, Nate. And I think my answer to that is our decisions, and oftentimes we pull it out in meetings or when we get our agendas ahead of time and get the certificates, the commissioners get the certificates, we refer ourselves to the guidelines that are accepted as part of the process that we have to follow in the village. And in our own guidelines, which are based on the National Historic Guidelines, like you already talked about in a conversation with Nadine, in there it talks about replacing kind, and that's like one of our favorite kind of icons to lean on is replacing kind. And then when you go forward, they're not replacing in kind, they're replacing in total. So one of the things we even did was to look for other models in town of concrete porches, and you simply don't find it in our community. So that didn't help the decision. And then when it's stamped concrete, it's not replaced in kind, and there's language that I shared with all of you in the decision. There's language in there that says it's a replacing kind. If the porch materials can't be repaired, then when you replace it, they should be replaced in kind, and it specifically says not replaced with different materials like concrete. I mean, it even uses that as a negative word there. So with all of that, you know, we use the guidelines that are approved by the board when OHPC was reformulated. They apply to national standards for historic preservation. We include in all that things like the training that we all recently went through with modern materials and how that's impacting historic preservation. Laura spoke to that. Even with all that decision, stamped concrete would not come up as an approved decision. And I think giving you folks credit, what Cindy would have to deal with if she wants to build that concrete porch, whether she tops it with stamped concrete or wood. Now she has a floodplain certificate that she's got to access. So she may be required some type of water ventilation under that porch because she's as a poured structure that wasn't there and there's no flow through water, she's actually affecting the floodplain. So she would have to, get permission to build that kind of structure in the village. That's past us. That becomes a code thing. So that's a lot of information, but I hope I answered your question.
Cindy, are you anticipating taking advantage of the tax credits?
No, I never have.
Okay.
And they knew that when I applied.
And I would guess that, I mean, I didn't research that specifically, but I would guess that there is some higher standard there than normal.
Yeah.
If you're taking state money for your project,
Well, then it
you have to do
definitely
it to their standards,
Yeah.
and you won't get your tax credit money.
Right.
But it's still the same, everybody's got the same standards they're supposed to be following. It's just the people who are getting their tax credits haven't checked closely. And they don't get their money unless they show the pictures that they use, by what their pictures all along before of what they had, and the pictures afterwards to show that they used and got everything and did what they were doing, and then they get their tax credits. So it's just a lengthier project for people who are gonna get credit, but it's worth it if you put the time to get the money credit. But you're just showing that you're following the higher standards and documenting your work. You're not, everybody is supposed to be following the standards though.
Yeah, if you have state money, you definitely have to, but this is Cindy money, not state
This
money.
is city.
Right. And if you don't want the tax credits, then that's your own deal.
I was told my house was already compromised.
That may be true. As far as the state looks at it, probably true. Even though you've done a very nice job. Okay, so I think, Jim's got his hand up again, but I think
Yeah,
we're good
oh,
on the
sorry.
foundation. We're really just on the topping, or decking, I'm gonna call it, and skirting maybe. We're gonna do that in concrete?
That'll be part of look like the base, or the foundation of the house.
That's part of the wall.
Yeah, the wood flooring, stairs, and skirting with stamped concrete.
Okay,
Because there is no really skirting on the deck right now.
but Jim took exception to my characterization of his foundation as stamped concrete. He says that his is stone. So it's gotta be applied stone. Is that what you're talking about doing? On the wall that you're.
It will look like his stone.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
it'll look like my foundation stone. His are bigger.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's what it is. It's a liner that goes inside the form. They pour the concrete to it, and then they peel the forms off and the liner off, and it's already got that in there.
Okay.
Okay, so it's like poured, like look like.
Like the
stone,
river walk
basically.
looks like wood.
Right.
This will look like
Yeah.
stone on
Yeah.
the side.
Yeah, so there's a good example of the stamped concrete.
Concrete.
That Riverwalk is stamped concrete to make it
And
look like
in
wood.
front of this other restaurant now, they have a stamped concrete apron.
And the same as around the farm and stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the replacement brick on the sidewalks is now stamped.
Right,
Yeah.
it is, yeah. Yep. Vote for you. Dave, go ahead.
I looked at your plans, Cindy, and I was floored by what you the trouble you went through to design it, and the materials, you have to keep an open mind for new materials always being out there. myself have a stamped concrete patio put in. I love it. Problem, when it rains or gets snow on it, it is an ice skating rink. And it is a super, super great place for pedestrians or anybody walking up on your porch to immediately fall.
It's like
There's a
that
lot of
now.
maintenance to it. You have to coat it. The coating is very expensive. You have to coat it every year. That makes it even more slippery. That's the problem I have. I did not have a problem with the foundation, as long as it matched the same color and texture and stonework. As far as matching the house, I thought that was a great alternative, but we do have to keep in mind for the floodplain issue that we discussed earlier. But the concrete you mentioned looks like wood. It kind of does. You can get it in several colors. They've made big improvements on it. Yep, I've seen the pictures.
I mean, it looks just like that
but
truck stuff they want me to
My
do.
problem with the concrete slab on the porch is the safety aspect of it.
Well, that's a good input from somebody who has it in their yard.
Do you have a roof over yours?
Excuse me?
Is there a roof over yours?
No.
See, and that's why I wanted to recess my steps, because like right now, my steps, just the moisture off the river lays on those steps.
Yep, makes sense. And it's gonna do the same thing with concrete pad.
Yes,
Stamped
but at
concrete
least
pad.
stamped will have a little texture to it.
Get
And
a
those
little-
wood steps
Mine's
don't.
textured as well. It's still slippery.
I want to say something. Bear with me because I don't remember all the stuff. I've been doing too much of it. So around the outside of the porch, the three sides, is going to be the, we'll call it the support wall that will hold the porch up.
Yes.
And then of course there'll be some supports in the middle and whatever is going to be inside. So that's going to be, how wide? 8 inches, would you say? 8 inches, come up to the porch. And then of course the outside face of it will look like the stone.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is maybe not appropriate, but I'm asking anyways. What's that concrete slab gonna cost? Not around the side, just the top.
The
Um,
deck, you
The
mean?
deck. Yeah, that's the slab.
$9,000.
How much?
I think $9,000. The whole base is $30,000.
Okay, so 9,000 with a 2 inch, what is it, 2 inches thick, the slab on top?
No, they'll probably recess part of it down in, it'll be probably 4 inches
4
thick.
inches thick. What do you think, just curious, I don't know that you want it or anything, but what do you think it would cost for some of that, plastic wood? Well, I wanted to buy some of that for one of my decks. What do you think it would cost to do your 30 by 10 piece? If that was something that you had any interest in having on there.
I haven't priced it out for it, I have it on my back deck. I'm not a fan of trucks.
No, that's fine, you don't have to have it, I'm just wondering what the cost thing might be for you.
Yeah, I don't know what that would cost.
Yeah, okay.
But I wouldn't, if I was gonna go trucks, I definitely wouldn't do the concrete around the base.
Wouldn't do the side, you wouldn't do the side.
No, why would I waste the money and time to do that?
I don't know what you need to hold the other stuff up.
Well, just a couple of piers and then the
Yeah.
substructure.
Yeah,
Right.
And so obviously you've thought about that and that's just not your favorite material, not your
no, I don't
idea.
like it, and, I mean, they're putting it on docks and stuff now at the lake. I don't like the product.
Okay.
It shrinks. No matter what you do to the ends of it, you can cut it and notch it and put the little piece in there and glue it. They come apart.
Yeah, it's plastic.
It's plastic.
Yeah.
And I'm really surprised it's,
I'm surprised.
That's-
I would
that's an
think
alternative
concrete would
material.
be
I know.
a better product than Trex.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not very impressed with the quality of Trex myself, you know.
I mean, I
It's
have it
just-
on my back porch, you can hose
It's
it off,
just
it
plastic
cleans up nice,
sawdust
but
glued together.
you
And
can
it does-
never make the ends look right.
It does warp and fall apart in the weather.
And you have to have your joists closer together with that, because I don't care how expensive it is, it works.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Because it's vinyl, plastic.
It's plastic.
Not quite as strong as what.
No, not at all. Although I agree with what they're saying about the new wood versus the old wood. If you go buy wood at Home Depot now, it's not nearly what.
It's one of the things that we
Yeah.
try to buy them flat, straight.
But even pressure treat doesn't last like it used to.
No, not at all. No matter how much you seal it.
Hmm?
No matter how much you seal it.
No.
Doesn't matter, yeah.
And you can't even buy good sealer in New York State anymore.
Yeah, because you can't buy oil
You
based.
can't buy it.
They've outlawed everything was good.
Yeah.
Okay, but it sounds like we're down to just the decking on the call. Like OHPC approves of the wall. The flood damage thing may not approve of the wall, but.
Right.
But the real question as far as the certificate of appropriateness is really just that 4-inch thick stamped concrete deck.
So did just because I did, I went down Front Street and looked at every single house and wrote a little summary of every single porch on every single house. That's what I did.
Did you
Got
look
time
at
on his hands.
325?
I did.
Which one is that license?
I was curious about whether that raw wood, what kind of wood that raw wood was, but once again though, that's, to be honest with you, that's not the factor here about what somebody else did. But it is, I certainly understand. And I wrote for years, I said, I was wondering if that great big wide porch was original with that house. Did Peter Gordon say that was original? Because that's a nice porch on there, great big wide porch
Yeah, I
there
don't know.
on your house. The nature of your house looks, I'm not saying that you should have it, looks like it could also be style specific to have a small porch, a small square porch in the middle. Looks like it might fit that. I don't know if it's a federal house, I don't know if federal is, I don't know what federal or what
Or the
exact
architectural
kind
style.
architectural it is. But that large porch looks like it goes on the house, the one that's there now.
Mhm.
So I think replacing a large porch there is a nice thing, to do that house. The columns in the rail look nice there, and you're trying to save them and use them, those appear to be nice features. So we like all that. I'm not making a judgment about whether the floor looks good or not. We got some that have indoor, outdoor grass on the floor.
I know.
Somebody doesn't like your concrete, put a
Artificial turf.
put an indoor, outdoor piece of car.
Yeah, go down to Owego.
Yeah. When everybody falls down, go get some
Right.
grass.
But I like the fact that none of these things have to do with the issue of the concrete, but I do like the fact that it's a large portion that you're going to do various things to make it look nice and retain its beauty. And so now the question, still the same question about
What's the deck?
appropriate about concrete.
So is the OHPC's objection to the concrete decking that because Jim mentioned the drip edge, that the overhang and drip edge would not be able to be done in a manner that would replicate a 1-inch by 1-inch overhang that a tongue and groove, straight grain fir tongue and groove floor would give you.
That was discussed, yes.
They have a form that when they pour that, just like the walls, they have to put a board around that to pour the concrete to put it in that area. There's also a liner that goes in that looks like board.
Like a board on the top.
Yeah, so
Right around the edge.
so the reveal.
It's not gonna be, you're not gonna see a piece of concrete sticking off the edge of that.
Okay.
You're
So the
gonna
reveal
see-
would look like
It would look like a board,
a board.
yeah.
So it look very similar.
It would just be thicker.
Right.
Well, and
right.
you would just think it was a board turned on its side.
Right, 'cause it's gonna be 4 inches thick instead of
Right.
half an inch or whatever.
And right now I have really no skirting. If you look at the pictures, somebody put lath on the base of that with screen. It's the ugliest porch base you ever saw if you look at it.
Yeah, well, we could probably find uglier ones, but yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not ugly. And this is what stamped concrete looks like. It looks like wood.
Yes, no, like, I mean, the Riverwalk's a good example, or,
They're wider
Right.
planks. And he's gonna try to get the smallest forms that he can get, cause right now, Trex is 5.5 inches wide.
yeah, it's pretty wide.
Some of my boards are 2 inches and some of them are 3 inches. whatever they could find.
Yeah, if you go by straight grain fir from Home Central, in the 1 inch tongue and groove, it's in a 3 inch board, which is, 2 7/8 inches.
Yeah. It's not wide.
Yeah, it's definitely not 5 inches wide, but.
Right.
Right. That would be like 2 pieces put together.
Right.
And are your boards, instead of just like a stamped, some of those stamp patterns are like, are you gonna come all the way from the house, like as one board, I'm gonna call it?
No, not 10 foot long.
Right.
So it would look like a hardwood floor probably.
Okay.
It would have the different,
Like joints or whatever?
it would look like joints, yeah.
Right, I mean, obviously it's not.
It's not, but, yeah.
So that look would be a little bit different, I guess, from a standard, like.
Not if you look the way it's pieced together right now.
Yeah.
I got one section that's like this pieced in.
It's expensive to replace and people do lots
And
of
they just
patching.
pop it, yeah.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, overall, that's the goal of OHPC, is to keep your house looking from the street, the same as it has looked forever.
Yeah, and I
That's the end
think,
goal.
yeah, and I think that's sort of where this is where the view ought to be taken from, is the street. So if it looked from the street, not when you're standing up looking at it, because it's private property, but if it looked from the street to be relatively similar to.
Right. If you drive by today and you drive by,
Yeah.
Lake this next winter,
Yeah.
it should be like, oh, okay. Pretty much the same.
So a 4 inch thick, is definitely different than a 1 inch thick
Yeah, no, that is a
porch floor
difference,
that's usually, that everybody else would have. My thoughts is to uphold OHPC's decision of the denial and have Cindy come back with another material that would get approved. Some kind of alternative material, maybe not Trex, but something that looks more closely to the same edge line as what is already exists on your porch and keeps that look.
So is that a motion to do that?
I'll make a
Because we all
motion.
probably have lots of thoughts about it.
All right, I'll make a motion, to uphold OHP's denial, 289 Front Street for the reason of the porch, material of the wood flooring, skirting, and foundation, replacement.
Okay. Do we have a second to that motion?
I don't know if I got the last piece, I'm sorry, what was the last part? About the skirting?
Their denials for the replacement of material of the wood flooring, skirting, and foundation portion.
Okay. And so your motion was to uphold all of that?
Yeah,
Not half of it, not just the surface, the whole thing?
Yeah, uphold the denial because of that portion, and then that way Cindy would then proceed to come back with a new application that would have an appropriate, approvable,
Okay.
substitute material for the porch floor deck, the flooring, the skirting, and the foundation portion.
Okay. So do we have a second to that motion?
Sure, I will second the motion.
Okay. Do we have any questions on the motion?
Excuse me, okay, the, March 7th, letter from OHBC. There's, recommended and not recommended materials on the second page. It says,
limited replacement using in-kind or compatible substitute material. Now, to me, as long as it looks like wood, I don't see where there's a problem
That's good.
with the concrete. You know, it's formed and painted to look like wood.
So Laura's motion, I looked at the picture, it looks like it.
Laura's motion is to deny it. Same
Well,
as
I'm
OHPC.
saying, I don't, that's the reason I would not deny it. As long as it looks like from the street, like wood.
Mr. Mayor.
Trustee?
So Laura said something about how it will look strange and weird if it's a 4-inch thick porch. Aren't they gonna, isn't the porch gonna be covered so that you can't see that it's 4 inches thick? So I don't see how it's gonna look like a 4-inch thick piece of concrete if it's gonna be covered.
Well, I'm not an architect.
That won't look like it's 4 inches thick. It'll have sides, it'll just look like a flat thing on top. You won't see that it's 4 inches thick. Right, am I making sense?
Yeah, you're talking about the skirt.
No, I'm talking about the thing on top. She was saying it's gonna look like porches look like they're 1-inch wood and stuff. This is gonna look like it's 4 inches, but it's gonna be covered, and it's not gonna look like it's 4 inches. It's gonna look like it blends right in with the foundation.
How do you know that?
That's what I'm talking about.
How do you know the other?
Yeah. Right, and we don't know which one's gonna go.
Cindy,
Well, but how do you know it's gonna look like it's 4 inches sitting on top of everything? So here's something, and then here's the 4-inch concrete thing that's sitting, and the other thing's recessed, so it's sticking out and it looks like it's 4 inches. That's not how it's supposed to look.
It sticks out now.
I know, but is the 4 inches of concrete gonna stick out? I thought it was gonna be recessed and stuff, so, and the top's gonna look like a board around it. Of the skirting.
That concrete will be that wood.
but are you putting skirting in front of the deck?
No.
Yeah, where you're taking out the latch, you're putting
stone,
other,
right?
some other.
That's gonna
skirting?
be stone. That's gonna look like the foundation.
Yeah, so it's gonna look like stone, not
So that
4
will,
inches.
that will be in front of the edge of the deck?
No, that'll be
All
set
the way
back.
around the.
I know what she wants to say, but I probably don't have a good picture of it.
This is what the stone looks like.
Right.
That'll be on the whole side, around the cracks and around, and this is what the flooring looks like.
So is this coming out above?
This will be on top of it. So this will be your sidewall, and this will be the top.
Well, so what Laura's saying is, this is gonna be 4 inches thick.
And it's gonna look like a board on the edge, just like everybody's trim porch on their porch.
So the side of that is also gonna look like wood.
Yes. No, because it's.
It's gonna be, if it's gonna be stamped like that, it's gonna look like stone.
Oh.
I mean, it's gonna, yeah.
Because the skirting is the stone and
Yes. And this is
that's
the
on
top.
top.
This is the top, and then say this is the top, and the edge of that top is gonna look like.
So that'll be 4 inches high or will it be?
Yes.
Which would also look like the top.
See how that looks like the top?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and that will sit on top of this. So it'll be stone on the side, like your base, your foundation on your house, and then this will be
Are you
the
gonna
top.
vote, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Show that to Laura, because I think she's getting a different visual.
So I drew the pictures on top of each other, but this is what you're trying to say. Right, so she's gonna have
This is the top.
a board like this coming around
Yeah.
with boards in the middle, where normally you'd have a board that sticks out a little bit. So that edge of that porch is gonna look like it's in a picture frame. But this is like, you'll see porches like
Like
that
stone,
before.
yeah, top is gonna look like wood, but that lips, that's off the edge, it's gonna
In
look
fact,
like.
if you do a Trex porch, that's what you do to a Trex porch.
Right.
Yes, about the.
To cover the nasty plastic.
That's currently.
So this will be a sticking out.
So you face it.
So then
Yeah, you face it like a picture frame.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what you do to a composite deck, so that you cover the nasty plastic.
Yeah, so that it looks, so it's got the wood,
So it's finished.
draining in it, yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, you see all the cut plastic.
So you won't, yeah, you won't be able to see the difference there.
You won't be able to look at it, it's just gonna look like a 4-inch thing.
Yeah, so you won't even see this.
You might see the same 4-inch board here, because this will be standard as well.
But that's what you do to a composite deck.
What?
This, you do exactly what you're gonna do with your stamp
Yeah.
to a
so you have
composite
hide
deck,
that.
because you gotta hide the plastic,
Yes.
and that's how you hide the plastic.
Or you gotta cut each one, glue them,
Right.
pin them.
So we've all seen decks like that everywhere.
Yeah.
All the way up to different. And that's to come over. There
Uh,
was the state.
Jim has his hand waiting on the thing at the bottom.
Correct.
Jim wants to tell us
The
something.
question was, this is 4 inches compared to a normal porch where you only see 1 inch.
Hey, Jim, what's up? What's their
Oh,
I don't think that's.
so did you give me, Mike, I'm sorry, did you give me permission to talk? Did you say yes? Okay. So I want to caution you right now that your recent discussion, the last 5 minutes, you're talking about your personal opinion about materials, whether your experience with stamped concrete is good or bad, that you don't like Trex, that you do like Trex. That's so far removed from where you should be as a board of trustees. As a board of trustees, you have empowered a commission to make decisions based on your approved guidelines and your laws. And we made a decision based on the wording of those guidelines and the direction given by federal preservation associations and our knowledge of new materials. We've made that decision and we made it very clearly. And I caution you in making part of your decision. I kind of like the looks of that. And I kind of like the looks of that because if our opinion is overturned, then the guidelines actually become a less viable document for the community. And as a board of trustees, your duty is to not defend, that's too strong a word, but to abide by guidelines that guide the very commission that you appointed. And by not applying that and applying your personal opinion about materials and how it might look and so on, you are not trusting the commission to do what's right in that decision. So I have to say that, I have to caution that because you just spent a whole lot of time with, I like this, I don't like that. It's a problem with slippery. It's a problem with this. That's not the point now. The point is there were guidelines that we read. We supported the guidelines. We went through a process and we had a scope of work to work off from that you guys have that copy of. And in changing that decision, you are changing the guidelines that were established through the agreement with New York State, through your CLG, through the reinstitution of OHPC. So it's a little bigger than I don't like Trex. I'm sorry. That's all I have to say.
Let me say this about that. So there is an appeals process within our law. And if our appeals process always upheld your decision based on the guidelines, why is there an appeals process? There would be no reason to have an appeals process. It's cut and dry. So there is an
I,
appeals process because
I,
there's more.
I agree. Like I agree, and that's to keep that's the
This is
checks and balances of the government facility. So it's checks and balances. So if we made a mistake interpreting the guidelines in our decision, then that's where the checks and balances. That's where the appeal comes in. Somebody coming up and saying, "This is what your guidelines say. I applied that. They said no," and that's where the checks and balances come in. But to come up with an opinion that's not based on a guideline or a law that's established for this village, I just caution you before making that decision. And I'll abide by whatever decision you make.
So our decision has to take into consideration the entire village, not just the historic district. So
No,
when we make,
our charge is only historic district. Our charge is only historic district.
the Board of Trustees decision
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
must take
Yep.
into account what's good for the entire village, not only what's good for our CLG status and the SHPO guidelines and all the rest of that.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Rusty.
I'm not sure I agree with that statement, but that's up to you.
This motion is only saying one thing, if this
Right, it's just
particular,
saying to
if this
uphold that
particular thing,
denial.
it doesn't say that, we made a decision one way, or it just says, are we gonna do that? We'll have to make, if another thing's gonna happen, we're gonna have to make a different motion. By the way, if that turns out to be, a reversal of this, we are going to need, and we need to talk about that now, or sometime here before a decision gets made there, of what the reason was, or reasons why we decided to overturn it. So we need to make that clear to amongst ourselves. What was the thing we saw here that said that was not correct, or what shouldn't be? So, because we're supposed to defend that, and it's supposed to be, that's how it's supposed to work. Okay.
So I will agree with Rusty on that. I think if, and I think my sense of the board might be that the present motion that's been seconded in which you are discussing might fail. And I think get past that, and then let's.
That didn't end the deal.
Right. And we're still talking here. Yeah. And then I'm gonna bring you back to 126-11's criteria for issuing a certificate of appropriateness. And because that's what you need to review very specifically if you are thinking of overturning the OHPC decision, because as Rusty just said, and I'm just repeating things that he's already said, I want, if you overturn OHPC, to be as clear as you can where you think the certificate of appropriateness should have been given in this particular instance. And some of the things that have been discussed tonight, I think, sound in those areas that are supposed to be reviewed, and just having that more fulsome discussion. So I don't know if you want to call for it.
Yeah, so let's vote on this motion, which is to uphold the OHPC decision. Rusty?
No.
Laura?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Fran?
No.
Ed?
No.
Charles?
No.
And no. So that doesn't end it.
It does.
Still here.
That was just that motion.
And so if everyone would look at 126-11, and you'll see in there A, B, and C. And these, well, in addition to D, E, and F. And A, B, and C set forth the 126-11.
I don't find it that.
I'm sorry, 126-12.
Here we go.
It's 126.
It's 126.
Yes,
It's
11 or 12.
It's 12. It's 12.
Yeah, it's 12. All right, so the key in subparagraph A to me is when issuing a certificate of appropriateness, there has to be a determination that the proposed work will not have a substantial adverse effect.
Which one are you reading, Nate? Sorry.
Sorry, 126-12.
A.
Yeah, A.
A, okay.
Yep.
Dash A.
So will not have a substantial adverse effect on the aesthetic, historical, or architectural significance and value of the property itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is not a landmark, so this is about the individual property itself, the district, or neighboring properties. So really you're focused on, will this have, or will it not have a substantial adverse effect on aesthetic, historical, or architectural significance and value of the property, the district, and neighboring properties.
So we've had extensive discussion on C already, so I think we've covered all of the ground there, right?
I think you have. And then, does talk about being guided by the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation, and then the following other principles. So, with those criteria in mind, and I don't know if you have a motion that you would want to propose, and if you could, in articulating a motion, identify some of the reasons why and how it meets those criteria.
Yeah, okay.
That should definitely be a thing.
Yeah. So I would make a motion to overrule the OHPC decision for this certificate of appropriateness. And I would make as part of that motion, I would propose that the proposed work, after having had all of this discussion in C, will not have a substantial adverse effect on the aesthetic, historical, or architectural significance and value of the non-landmark property. Because it's going to be something that's seen from, this isn't part of the motion. Because it is visually going to be far enough from the public right-of-way that this choice of materials and scope of work are appropriate.
I second that.
So we got a motion, we got a second.
Okay, the only thing I think we need to add to that is that it, has, the code standards.
Well, that would
That's not
automatically be the next step.
part of
That's
this.
automatic in there? Okay.
I mean, that would be the next step in getting a building permit.
Yeah.
So then, Ron, when putting the minutes together, if you can include that as like the finding, you know.
I was just gonna use this, is he quoting that?
Yeah, but the key piece of it, I think that Ed is hinging his motion on, in support of it, is that the distance from the public right of way to the location of the work is such that the change in material and the what's the other word we're looking for here? The aesthetics will not have a substantial adverse impact on the property's historic significance or neighbors or the district. I just want that to be clear in the minutes, because that's the reason, the rationale for the motion.
We'll have to tweak
So-
that a little bit.
Yeah, watch the,
Watch that video.
gonna have to help Rodney write this, right?
Yep.
So in, B1A, B saying making a determination, and 1 saying the decision to approve application or deny, shall be based on the following principles. This is 12B1A. Got all that? Big B, 1 little a. Are we on it?
Yeah.
Name's looking,
Yeah, wait, I'm sorry, you're adding what? What is this?
no, that's what I'm gonna talk about.
Oh, you're ready.
12612, we're in discussion.
B1A.
Big B, 1 little a.
Yep.
So properties which contribute to the character of the historic district shall be retained with their historic features altered as little as possible. So this particular thing is going to put a porch there that's already there, going to try to use the existing columns, try to use the existing railing, try to make it look as much as possible like it did before. So I think that A has been met.
I would agree with that.
If we want, if in the defense, if we vote for this, A would have been met. Any alteration shall be compatible with the surrounding historic district. Once again, porch, same thing. Yes, it has a different floor. That doesn't seem to be incompatible with the district. I went and looked at property there, and there isn't much concrete anyplace. There's a little bit here and there, but there's not much. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the infinite and the end of all of it. And we'll look at another piece here in a minute. Then the other one is about new construction, so that would
This is replacement.
be some of our reasoning about that. And then several other places it talked about materials, and we said that when we were looking at the Secretary of the Interior's thing, where her opinion was that, well, it wasn't her, she wasn't the secretary, but that the new feature shall match the old design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, materials. It's not impossible, but the materials can be different.
They can be.
And it's gonna meet all those other.
It'll meet every other thing.
It's gonna look the same,
It's
it's gonna
gonna-
have the same color.
The neighbors like it. Doesn't mean, that's just part of it. That's not the deal. The deal is whether or not, Jim is not incorrect when we say various things about our likes or somebody's likes. That's not how we decide. What we're trying to do is decide whether or not the guidelines are so solid and so firm that we should not overturn them. To our mindset, maybe, if we're gonna have a defense of it, we believe the guidelines aren't that firm, aren't so firm that this particular instance demands that. Would that be, maybe that'd be the kind of thing we would be, I'm saying if we decide to do that, we're just, that isn't a done deal. that we're gonna decide to do that, but if we're even gonna vote on deciding to do it, we need to have those things clear in our minds, that these are the reasons we're doing it.
It's clear.
We need to have that if we're gonna vote, because we shouldn't be voting to do this if we don't have these reasons that are defensible.
Well, if the aesthetics are the same,
Well, they're
Can I ask a question?
not necessarily the same.
So like in regards specifically to the aesthetics, because what we're talking about is replacing a wood look skirting with a stamped concrete skirting.
That looks like.
That's gonna look like
Oh, so
stone
stone,
concrete
yeah.
skirting. That's really what you're gonna see from the street. You may see an inch or two on the top of tinted concrete. But that's really the biggest change you're gonna see, because everything else above that is replacing kind.
Yeah, that's fine, you're not
So
gonna really.
that's what
Right
we're
now
talking
it's
about here. You're
white
talking about
lattice,
the difference
it's gonna
between
end up being stone
replacing
like the
something that looks like
foundation.
wood skirting with something that looks like stamped concrete stone skirting.
But
I thought-
OHPC admitted that that was already
We thought that James
acceptable.
said that would maybe not be problematic.
He said he has the same thing.
So Linda Mackey is the person who sent she is the Historic Preservation Program Analysis Certified Local Program Coordinator at the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation. That's the SHPO office. The response about this property that she gave specifically about the porch floor, what was applied, the porch floor will be stamped concrete. This was the sticking point with OHPC. Linda's response after seeing the application and looking at all the goods, her response was, "This would not meet the standards. We have approved composite decking materials for historic tax credits. A sample of the material should be provided. The substitute material should have a smooth finish and not a faux wood grain, no concrete."
We're not interested
I
in
mean,
tax credits.
Right, so that's where
she
they're
doesn't
coming
care for the tax credit.
Well,
from. So that's one opinion.
even if you don't need tax credits, she's still telling you what the standards are.
Right, but our standard is that it looks the same.
So a
That's
So-
our interpretation of the SHPO standard that we're embodying in this motion.
Right.
the substitute material should have a smooth finish and not a faux wood grain.
Or what if it's real wood, then it has a grain to it.
Right.
What is shown is a
And grass has
very
a grain to it.
exaggerated
Yeah.
faux wood grain.
So I have a question. If we're always gonna go by what SHPO says,
And
why
do
did we
have
take my application in June and send it to SHPO and tell me no in July?
Well, and why do we have the commission and why do we have an appeal? If there's no wiggle room. Because
Well,
we
that's
have no
interesting.
say, we just send everything to SHPO and do what they say.
That's interesting that's the email or whatever, because on all the documents we have, doesn't show. We don't have that. No, I don't say it's not true, I'm just saying, everything that we're working on doesn't have that.
It should be in your packet. Everybody should have it in the packet.
I don't know, we should have the email from her.
Yep.
You have a page
Cindy's
number?
received it.
That's what I
Everybody should have this.
What you have in your hand is what I received.
This was the response from her, we put it in, see, it doesn't say all that stuff, but that doesn't mean that she didn't do it.
Somebody online wants to say something. Cookie? Go ahead.
No problem, I just say it's not on there.
Go ahead, Cookie.
Well, that's good,
Hi.
there's a full, where,
I'm sorry, did you call on me?
Yep. What do you
Thank
got?
you. So I'm sorry that I'm having trouble hearing a lot of stuff, so I might be completely off base, but it seems to me that you've overruled us, which is, your prerogative, but we're a unit of the government, so if you say we didn't do it right, then you should buck it back to us to redo it.
So we haven't done that yet. It's on the table.
We haven't voted yet.
But what you're doing is you're discussing how to fix it, and you've appointed us to deal with that.
Um,
But we've already sent it back to the OHPC once.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that you
No,
did it
you
wrong.
sent it back, you sent it back to us for like a technicality and we didn't fill out the right paper. This is, now you're saying that you don't agree with our decision, okay, copacetic. Now we go back and we say, how can we cure this?
So the village board, I think, could do that. I think they have the ability to uphold, overturn, or modify the decision that was made. You know, if they felt that there was a need for more information. I mean, this review is on the entirety of the record itself. And so all of the information that you folks had before you is before the village board. And I think I have no issues with the village board making the decision for itself at this point instead of setting it back down. You could set it back down if you wanted to, but I think that you are not required to in this instance. In the prior instance,
No, I'm not saying you're required. I'm suggesting that it might be the way to go.
And a correction on the way to look at that, there was not a paper technicality, the OHPC, in doing their job and everything else, tabled something, they didn't make a decision, so we requested that a formal decision be made, and we requested that it be formally, as the law requires, sent to Cindy.
Right.
So there wasn't a technicality or paper thing, it just hadn't been taken care of, and it needed to be taken care of. That's just a clarification of that.
Okay, so we were back going through these things. Have we covered all the bases?
yeah, no, I mean, I think you did.
Because we have a motion, we have a second. We've covered all the bases. And we can sit here all night and argue, or we can vote and see what happens.
And I'm about ready to vote.
Yeah.
Well, then,
Okay,
my lectures are never
reread
over.
what the-
If somebody, I'm sorry, if somebody thinks that this village board doesn't take this seriously and doesn't take it seriously when they choose to overrule one of their, when they have the authority and the responsibility, one of their governing bodies, they better not think that, because we do take it seriously and we don't like to do that. In fact, there is certainly a large thought that we don't want to be overruling anybody. So this is not just something willy-nilly, whatever result comes out of this.
I would agree.
Now, that was not my inference. Just to be clear, that was not my inference at all.
Right, yeah, no, it was just a general statement.
Okay.
I'm just making it clear.
Should we vote? Yes. Start that this time. Fran?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Charles?
Yes.
Dave?
No.
Laura?
No.
Rusty?
Yes.
And yes. Yep. Passes.
So now does Rob have to issue a certificate of appropriateness?
Probably.
Well, there's still,
Whoever
you know
normally
the game,
signs.
there's still all kinds of
Yeah.
people that have to say this, and somebody has to issue that, and blood crap for this, and
But yes, your next hurdle may be the floodplain development.
So Michael, walk me through that process.
I think it
Should be.
just John.
So before we adjourn, may I speak? So I would like to address an instance of misconduct that I have perceived by Chair Oberheiser in an email that he sent to the mayor on March 18th in an attempt to influence our decision regarding this application before us. And in the email, again, it was March 18th, he made two misstatements of truth in an attempt to get me to recuse myself from voting on this certificate of appropriateness. And I have a number of things that I could share with the entire board. But he stated that my property at 14 Front Street, that I had done major porch work and discarded many of the original historic features, which is incorrect. And he also stated that an application for a certificate of appropriateness was never submitted. And I have a number of documents here that prove those things to be incorrect. The, OHPC law 126-2, in describing the formation of the commission, allows for the removal of commission members for cause. And I would posit that this is an instance of misconduct that would warrant removal for cause. And I can handle this up out. I don't know if we want to address this now, or how we want to go about approaching it.
So the removal section you're looking at?
Yep.
I think it calls for a public hearing.
Yes.
And so I don't have an issue with you distributing it,
Yeah.
talking about it tonight, but prior to the board being able to, if the board, actually, it says may be removed by the mayor.
By the mayor.
Subject to approval of the board of trustees after public hearing. So I guess if you want to submit it, circulate it, the mayor's got to make a decision whether he thinks it constitutes a removal instance.
All right, so I will hand out all of this information. That's that's just the relevant portion of the email.
That was interesting.
I don't have enough copies. I'm gonna have to go back. Rod, can I? Yeah. Can I get? Can you make a copy?
Do you have all but one?
You can have mine, I never had it.
I don't.
Okay.
Just pass them out, I'll give one.
I don't need one.
Okay.
I mean, I'll get it. All right. I think I've honestly.
Yeah, I already have it.
So this is the minutes of the meeting where my certificate of appropriateness was approved. And again, I'm gonna run out, so I think you've already got this. This is my certificate of appropriateness. You already got that. You got one. And these are the before, during, and after pictures of my porch project.
What you did with the porch looks good.
Thank you, it's not done yet. I'm gonna have to go back to OHPC to finish what I wanna do with it.
Always a work in progress. Any constructions on mine?
Yeah, I
You do?
saw that
Okay,
online,
gotcha.
yeah. That's on that.
Got rid of the tree. Yeah, all right, got rid of the bush. Is that bush a store?
Yeah, those bushes were not a good thing for the property.
No, they usually are.
Oh, here it is. So this is what the property is like in our inventory. It's what is commonly referred to as the Cornell study. Rusty's computer.
It shows that original work. There's no bush.
I got an extra one. There you go.
Perfect.
So as you can see, I did not remove historic features. I restored them. And I did have a certificate of appropriateness, which admittedly was expired by the time the work was completed. But the absolute statement is that I never applied for one is what I take issue with.
Yeah. Well, it definitely is false.
It was never submitted.
It's proven that you definitely had one. Maybe it was expired, but you definitely had one.
You don't have to make a decision tonight necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, you want to think about it.
Yeah, so I guess we'll review it. And it's definitely consideration, that among other issues that have happened recently. Because there have been other issues recently with other applications and projects, or painting, and all kinds of things.
Do you have to have a certificate to paint?
No.
No.
OHPC has no determination on paint. That's very
So
clear
one
in
of
the
the
law.
things you just read from the historic stated something about paint.
Color, it did say color.
On the front?
Yes. We very specifically took that out of our law.
I'll read it to you, but the paint cannot be determined.
There was an issue that I heard about recently not recently, 6 months or so ago, about some murals that OHPC has no say over. And were an issue, and the murals are not there because of issues. Which are very wrong. Those should have been stopped as soon as the application came in, and they should have said, we don't control paint, do what you like. Paint your Indians on the side of the building.
Thank you.
So.
Well, so what's the process? We would have to
Might I?
do something, I don't know.
I mean, so Mayor, you would have to identify, I think, the reasons for a removal for cause. Inform the village board that you are recommending that, or that you are removing this person, subject to approval of the board after public hearing. The board would then schedule a public hearing.
Okay.
So we have to have that public hearing.
Yeah, you definitely need a public hearing.
So, no, well, once again, you know, all I think, process with this information just now, this is not an appropriate time to
So we're not
set a
gonna,
public hearing.
yeah.
There needs to be some discussion and thought about this stuff, but it has, this is a step of whatever will come.
We'll definitely take it into consideration for
This is bringing.
more board meetings a week from now.
No, let's not do it then, Mike.
It's actually 2
Let's
weeks.
not do it then. Let's do it the Monday after then, so we
Yeah,
can
right.
meet
Yeah,
every
every
single
week.
month.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't interfere with the
That's
total
like
eclipse.
that.
Can you still get out?
That is eclipse. We
Yeah.
cannot do
We
it.
can't do
Most
it.
of us
Right,
will be
but-
stuck on the road somewhere,
That's
coming
true,
back
yeah.
from eclipse.
Oh, that's right. That's the first, yeah. It's actually not next week, it's the week after.
It's on the 8th.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
no,
it's next week. This was supposed to be early.
Eclipse is really hard.
And I'll go another, I'll go another step.
The block's not long enough yet, right?
Mike, I'll go another step beyond that. It's probably not terribly appropriate for us to
Cherry
Now
on
we
that.
put there.
chat about that right now, because it's just.
Right, yeah, no, we got our.
It's not the way to go about this.
We'll do more fact finding. See how that process goes, because I don't even know what happens if we do that, what happens after that. I don't know.
We'll talk about it.
Okay, now,
Good job.
Steve, we still need to go over the cop hiring.
Oh, yeah, we did put that on hold. Do we want to do that next week?
We got what with that.
We have a meeting in a week.
I know we do.
I know it needs to happen.
I just, what, do we have any more, business at all?
No.
I'm gonna try to call the chief right now.
We can do public comment. You got any public comment?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I'll still come to the.
Pardon me?
Thank you.
Free
I'll still come to the board. board meeting.
But we
No, we don't have any more.
everybody
This for
was
the appraisal.
It's gonna be part of the process.
Don't chat about it. I'm serious.
Okay.
This is,
Let's see if we
key
can,
business about this stuff.
let's see if we can stall for 2 minutes here.
Rusty does have a cell phone.
Try to email on that too.
Busted.
I don't know my number, it's never
Yeah.
on.
I'll call
It
it
doesn't
right
take emails, it doesn't take message, it only has the chief, I can call the chief.
now. Got a bad
I have two
phone.
people that don't wanna hear from me.
Is it red? Pick it up, Joe Biden answers.
Yeah, right. Don't quit yet. Somebody, you guys always like to tell it, don't tell a stupid story. Charles, thank somebody,
Sing to somebody?
thank somebody.
Oh,
Did you bring your guitar?
I didn't bring the guitar.
So does that certificate go right to Nick?
Yes.
Mike, how's the roosters down on your end of the block?
I haven't heard them lately,
Really? Did you become a meal?
although I did have some delicious
How hard
fried
is it
chicken
to
the other
find
day.
Oh,
the,
Yeah.
numbers?
like 66,000 something versus 64,000.
Which is the,
This is
fourth year,
Right, it was
Yeah,
the same,
it's-
it was just
whatever
this
the- it's
year.
just
I move that we hire Brendan, McDevitt, as full-time police officer for the fourth year rate or what, at
There you go.
66, or whatever it is, we'll put the numbers in. 6-month probation, start, with a starting date of April 21st.
I second that.
Okay. Any other discussion about that? So we're gonna hire him at the year 4 rate, because he has plenty of experience. Rusty,
Yes.
Laura,
No.
Dave,
Yes.
Fran,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
and yes. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
See you guys in a week.
Not me.
Yeah, not here. Be careful.
Thank you for your service.